Hi, so we're in Syracuse and leaving in less than an hour for our transfer, and we realized that we never did like an update video on how many embryos we ended up with, and that I had started my cycle. So like the 24th of May, I started my cycle, and then on the 26th, I went for my baseline. And they did it a little bit differently this time because my lining was a little too thick still at baseline. They like it under 6 and mine was at 8. So instead of starting my medicine that day like you typically do, they had me started a day late so my lining could shed a little bit more before we started thickening it back up. And then I went last Thursday, June 4th, and had my second ultrasound and blood work, and my lining was at a 13, I believe it was, and that's the thickest my lining's ever been in any of my transfers, which is really good. So they said we were good to go and that we could transfer this coming Monday, which is today, June 8th. And we will be transferring 3 embryos. We stated in past videos that we wanted to let them go to day 5 because our last batch of eggs that we had purchased, we stopped them at day 3. And so this time we said we wanted to go to day 5, and we had bought 8 eggs. So 8 eggs, because they were frozen eggs, they tell you to expect only half of them to survive. You typically lose some in the thaw because it's just a cell, and they're easier to lose than, you know, fresh eggs. So we got a call, we got an email, all 8 eggs made the thaw. And then we got the call on the next day, which is the day 1 fertilization day, saying that, you know, 8 eggs made the thaw, 7 fertilized altogether, 7 fertilized, 7 fertilized, 4 were growing appropriately, and then they were going to watch 3 of them because I guess they initially fertilized, but they weren't, they would like them at 2 cells on day 1, but 3 of them were only 1 cell. So we had 7 that they were going to update us on day 3. So they called on day 3 and said that, you know, the 3 that they were watching to see if they developed past a 1 cell didn't do anything, so those were discarded. And then that left the 4 that had grown normally. One of those, like, degenerated, I don't remember what the word is they used, it stopped growing. And then, so that only left us with 3 embryos, and 1 was graded. Their grading system for day 3s is a little bit different than like your typical 5AA or 3BB, or, you know, whatever the typical grading is. For day 5s, day 3s are a little bit different. So you get 2 numbers. The first number is 1 through 4, 4 being the best, and that's kind of like on how they look. So it's kind of like they say it's a beauty contest. The 1 through 4 is on how they look. And then the second number is the number of cells, and it goes from like 3 cells all the way up to greater, the highest they'll put in is greater than 9. So our best embryo was graded a 3, so good, greater than 9 cell. So it was a really good embryo. And then the second one was a 2-6, so it's considered fair. It's good, fair, and poor. This was considered fair 6 cell embryo. And then the other one from this new batch of eggs was a graded 1-3, so that's considered a poor embryo. And then we still had 1 embryo left over from our previous batch of eggs from 2 completely different donors. We had 1 embryo left over from that, and it was graded a 2-5, I believe. And so they said, you know, with it being, and that one was already frozen. So the embryologist asked, you know, if we wanted to push them to day 5 or freeze at day 3. In our clinic, they recommend if you have less than 4 to freeze at day 3 because you'll lose a lot between day 3 and 5. And our doctor, and I think it's becoming more common, believes that some of them you would lose between day 3 and 5 by trying to push them to day 5. You wouldn't lose if they were put into their natural environment, able to grow that way rather than in like a petri dish. So they recommend if you have less than 4 to freeze on day 3. So we agreed and froze our 3 greater than 9, 6 cell, and 5 cell, or greater than 9, 6 cell, and 3 cell. We had them go ahead and freeze. And then last Thursday, when they called me with the results of my second ultrasound, they agreed that it would be acceptable to transfer 3 embryos. So we have 4 altogether, including from the last batch. We told them that because they're not graded the best, even though the 1-3 could technically make a baby, it's not a very high percentage of it working. And so they said that they agreed that it would be acceptable to transfer 3. So we're transferring, actually it's from 2 different donors, and they say it's not an issue at all. Typically, you know, our clinic does add-on packages for you do your IVF cycle, but if they think, you know, you're a little bit older and your eggs might not be the greatest quality, they allow you to do an add-on package of like 4 donor eggs, and a lot of women will transfer one of their one embryo using their eggs and one embryo using a donor. So it being 2 separate donors doesn't make a difference. So we are transferring from this new batch of eggs 2 embryos. We're transferring the 3 greater than 9 cell and then the 2 6 cell. And then from our previous donor and batch of eggs, we're transferring the remaining one from that group, and it is a 2-5. So we're transferring 3, and now they could technically all implant, but they don't. It's not a very high percentage that would work. We're hoping for at least 1. I would be happy with 2, you know, or 3, whatever works. But so that's kind of the update. That's what we're doing. Like I said, we'll be leaving in like less than an hour to go to the transfer. We actually, instead of driving the last 2 transfers, we drove out here from Texas. And luckily this time, with the whole pandemic going on, airfare is a little cheaper. So we were able to get our airfare and hotel for like $300 a piece, which typically in the past, when we would look 2 days before it was time to go, it was always like $700-800 a piece. So we got lucky this time that it was affordable and it wasn't sky high to fly out here. So we flew out here and got here yesterday morning. We left out like at 5. Our plane left at 5:08 a.m. From Dallas yesterday, and then we got here like at about 11 a.m. And then tomorrow, our transfers today at 2:30, and then tomorrow we fly out of here at like 11 something, and then get back to Dallas about 5. But we just that's our update from like the making the embryos, my cycle, everything. And then we're also going to be making a video of the transfer today. So we'll see you soon.